eagerly anticipating the return. And what fight card are we talking about? We're talking, of course, about Magomed Ankalaev against Johnny Walker 2. And yes, they did this before, but a lot like a lot of Magomed Ankalaev fights, we haven't been getting the conclusions that we are looking for here. We've got on the one hand a Magomed Ankalaev that had a no contest in his last fight, right? Could have easily been a disqualification in that bout against Johnny Walker. But we look just one fight prior, a lot of people thought that it could have went the way, of Ankalaev, but instead, the judges call it a draw and we get an inconclusive result. It left the light heavyweight title vacant, if you remember. That's why we ended up with Yuri taking on Pereira for the vacant light heavyweight title. Yes, Freak says, Liam, you are Jewish. Stop it. I am not, my brother. I am an Irish Catholic and have been all my life. But I appreciate the sentiment. Respect for all my people around the world. If you are a Christian or just a person that celebrates Christmas around the world, hey, cheers to you. Thanks for watching. And if not, happy holidays nonetheless. We appreciate you being here and much love and God bless you nonetheless. But I am a Christian, my friend. I appreciate you asking. And shout out to Cole, regular viewer, says, yo, Liam, happy holidays. Cheers to you, my brother. Absolutely. We got the Conor McGregor Merry Christmas, the absolutely fook and nobody sweater on today. Shout out to Kristen as well, future guest of the program. I said we're going to bring some women on the show. There's a lot of talented female handicappers out there, and we're not getting the numbers in terms of females viewing the show. And so we're very appreciative of the women that do check out the show, Kristen being one of them. And, let's get back into the action, though. With that being said, and we've got, Johnny Walker, on the other hand, he's a guy that is definitely a fan favorite, definitely a funny guy, a likable guy. He's got a great personality. But we saw a little bit of that defensive vulnerability in the last fight. We definitely saw, a willingness to get into the fire and exchange a little bit. But Johnny Walker, what are his assets? What are the things that he brings to the table? Number one, he's a massive underdog in a light heavyweight fight. Let's talk about that off the rip. Johnny Walker's a guy that, he's not going to win every fight, right? He's got some defensive liabilities. He's got many losses via knockout, but we also know that he's really dangerous in terms of his offensive upside in the early going. He goes out there and he puts on a pretty violent display at his best. And we saw he's kind of had a tale of two careers in the UFC so far, right? We've seen, he came out, he was getting explosive finishes, explosive wins. But I tweeted the other day, what is his best win, really? He doesn't have a great list of wins in the organization. He's fought some tough guys, but he fought Jamal Hill, got knocked out in that fight. Fought Thiago Santos, got a unanimous decision loss there. Could have went either way, kind of a toss-up fight. Not in the sense of how it was going to be judged. Obviously, Santos deserved the win, but it was a fight that was well within his reach, and he kind of just let it slip away from him, right? Just let the close rounds go to his more experienced opponent there in Thiago Santos. He lost a gross grappling-based match to Nikita Krylov. If you guys remember that fight, Johnny didn't look horrible on the mat. He was able to scramble with Krylov. He didn't get submitted like a lot of guys would have in that position, but his awkwardness and his length wasn't enough to save him. His takedown defense wasn't there. His grappling chops looked a little bit sloppy. I do think we've seen some improvements in his grappling decision making since going to SBG Ireland. I know a lot of people clown on the gym, and I'm an Irishman, right? I've disclosed, my biases up front, but I'm just looking at a guy in Johnny Walker who went from being very poor positionally on the ground to making some better decisions, trying to defend takedowns a little bit better, and being more of a threat with his offensive jiu-jitsu. Where did we see that? In the Iwan Kutalaba fight. A guy who went out there aggressively trying to wrestle him in the first round. And we saw the length become a real factor for Johnny Walker. It allowed him to get a submission hold that otherwise he probably wouldn't have been able to get. And when I'm looking at a guy like Johnny Walker, he seemed in the Anthony Smith fight not to be as dangerous as he used to be, but to be a lot more smart and patient than he used to be, and a little bit better at picking his shots. So here's the thing about Ankalaev, right? He's clearly the more talented guy. He's being priced accordingly, but he doesn't have quite the same size frame as Johnny Walker. Johnny's got that big, long, awkward frame, and that hasn't always saved him in his fights. However, we've seen Magomed Ankalaev. I said, what is his best win in the UFC? You know, he's definitely got the better list of wins. He beat Nikita Krylov, right? Common opponent. But another common opponent is Paul Craig, the Bear Jew. And while Magomed Ankalaev won many of the minutes of that fight, his only loss in the UFC was in his UFC debut. He got submitted by Paul Bear Jew Craig, a middleweight at this point, right? A guy who's moved down in weight classes. So I do think that's something to note because Johnny Walker is a guy that could easily compete at heavyweight. You know, he's a big guy. I don't think he could possibly compete at 185. He's 6'6" or something like that. Just a massive guy for this division. So I do think that Johnny Walker presents some interesting challenges for Ankalaev, you know, with his size. But Ankalaev should have the superior skills, you know, and skills more often than not win the fights. But you look at a guy like Ankalaev, and the things that stand out as being potentially nerve wracking when you're betting on a big favorite, a bunch of non conclusive results. I mentioned at the beginning the no contest with Johnny Walker last time out. He's lucky that wasn't a disqualification. If you get disqualified at minus 450, you still lose the money, right? Same thing with Jan Blachowicz, right? A lot of people expected him to roll there. Jan Blachowicz ended up closing a massive underdog. I bet Jan in that spot right at close because it got to a big plus money price. I'm like, man, Jan Blachowicz, he's probably going to keep it close. And on the night of, I thought the draw was the right result. But on rewatch, I thought Ankalaev deserved the nod there, albeit close. I thought he deserved the first round. In a close round, I thought that rounds 2 and 3 went to Blachowicz, but I thought rounds 4 and 5 went to Ankalaev. So he's definitely got the cardio to compete for 5 rounds, but the leg kicks were bothering him. You know, I think that's a tool that Johnny Walker could really try and utilize in this spot. Yes, he was able to tank through it, but he did take a lot of damage there and look uncomfortable. So I think that that's something to watch out for if you're trying to game plan for Johnny Walker. What should he try and leverage here? You know, he should try and avoid getting chinned and use his long frame to set up some low kicks and try and damage this guy because we've seen that hurt him in the past. Kristen in the comments says, you never know what you'll get with Walker. Ankalaev, much more consistent. True, but you know, consistent to a point, right? Even the Iwan Kutalaba fight, the first time that they ran it had some controversy because Iwan Kutalaba was acting the fool. But it was a spot there where Ankalaev kind of got the benefit of the doubt. And then the next time they ran it, he brutally knocked out Kutalaba. That was a disgusting finish. One of the you know, cleanest knockouts you'll see in the Ankalaev career. But again, the names that he was beating early on in his UFC run, Marcin Prachnio, Klidson Abreu, Dalton Lugiambula, Iwan Kutalaba twice in a row. And then when he started to step up in competition, the finishes weren't really materializing. He was starting to get tagged a little bit more by the Nikita Krylovs, the Volkan Ozdemirs, and the Thiago Santoses of the division. But with that being said, I do think Ankalaev is just a better talent, projects a little bit higher. So I'd have to favor him to win here, but I don't think I could lay the minus 450 type of price tag. I think that's too wide. Clay says, hola, Liam, get COVID. Was looking for something to fall asleep to. Hey, shout out to you, brother. I appreciate you watching the show live. Huzzah, and I hope you feel better, my man. So yeah, guys, I don't think we should overcomplicate this main event. On the first look, we always start with the main event. So that's why we started with this one. But it's not the most compelling fight for me on the card. I do think, you know, I favor Ankalaev, but if there's been no parlay buster, I'll be sitting there with my hands, you know, potentially, you know, just seeing if I can find that late value. Because the other thing is, I do think a lot of parlays will be anchored with Ankalaev on this card. I do expect him to win, but this line will probably continue to move in one direction. I expect a lot of people to be on the Ankalaev side here. So I'll probably just wait and see what this number gets to because I do believe in the principle of the light heavyweight division being volatile. And this is a division I've historically been profitable in. So I'm going to just continue to ride my theories. And my theory for light heavyweight is that really most people can't be a massive favorite. I do think because Ankalaev has takedown upside here, you can't rule that out. He could just take down Johnny Walker and ride out some top position. But I noted some of the grappling improvements from Johnny Walker and the long, awkward body type. So I don't know that that's going to be easy sailing. And then on the feet, it's a volatile enough matchup where I expect Ankalaev to have the clear advantage in skill, you know, in his positioning. But I think Johnny Walker is probably just a little bit more athletic and a little bit more dynamic. So it's an interesting matchup to run back here for a main event setting. And Johnny Walker does have main event experience. He's gone 5 rounds before, hasn't gone his way, but he did seem like he had the cardio to go 5. So I think that's another interesting note here. Not a 3-round bout like the last time. Maybe they'll start a little bit slower. Maybe they'll be measuring each other. One thing I've noticed is I've lost a lot of money in the light heavyweight division betting on fights not to go the distance, because oftentimes they're heavily chalked, and you really got to be very confident to lay that kind of chalk price. Because even in these 5-round main events, Magomed Ankalaev has been a big culprit. Johnny Walker, Thiago Santos, another great example. Heavily chalk fights not to go the distance that end up going in the light heavyweight division. So just a couple things for you guys to think about from a long-term trends perspective. Shout out to Blaze, says, Liam, what's good, brother? Appreciate you being here, my man. Shout out to Jake Fagan with the $5 dono. Longtime listener of the program. Thank you so much, Jake. He says, one of the hardest workers and sharpest people in the game. Congratulations to you on your growth this year. I know it will continue next year. Thank you, my man. The goal next year is 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. No more fucking around. No more playing games. No more small growth. We're going big time growth. We're not doubling it. We're doing more than that. And we're going to do it by being consistent. We're going to do it by putting in a ton of work, and we're going to do it by continuing to try and be high effort, but also high positivity. We're not here to be a downer on your day. I'm not here to tell you I'm smarter than you or I think I know everything. That's not the way it is on this show. I'm just going to tell you how I feel. I'm going to tell you the things that I think. I'm going to tell you the research I've done, and I'm going to tell you my past experience. I've been betting profitably on MMA for 3 years now, tracked, all third party. And that's what I try and do, is put people in a position to win. I've been thinking about this. I've been writing out some basics of gambling for beginners, some tools to try and help people win, because the ethos of this show from the very beginning has been good guys versus the bookies. So truly appreciate, what you guys have done in terms of supporting the show, everybody who's watching right now. And my man, Jake, longtime supporter. Thank you very much for the dono, brother. Means the world. Ramsey says, you're predicting a fight in 1 month time. You don't watch Muay Thai or boxing. It's not to say that I don't watch them, but I'm not going to come to you like I'm an expert in Muay Thai, because I'm not an expert in Muay Thai. I am an expert in the UFC, especially in the roster of fighters in the UFC and in the Dana White Contender Series. Now, that being said, I've done content on boxing before. I've done content on celebrity boxing and Jake Paul boxing Ben Askren and these kind of crossover events in the past. If you guys want more boxing content and coverage from me, I'm happy to do that. But most of the time I lean into what my audience asks for, and my audience likes to talk about MMA. They asked me to do more content early about the fights. So that's what I'm trying to do here. But I am a guy who's open to suggestions. So if you guys have thoughts on what you'd want to see from the channel, additional coverage, things like that, go ahead and shoot that down in the comment section below. I did have a couple comments on the boxing matches on Twitter. I was thinking to myself, maybe I should handicap these boxing matches, but frankly, I didn't know how much interest there was. So guys, if that's something that you'd like to see from the channel, if you say it, I know, but if you don't say it, I don't know. So it's the easiest public opinion research in the world. I try and read all the comments and answer them as much as possible as well. So appreciate that. Shout out to Eric, says, you and a few other people have been very helpful educating me and dabbling with sports gambling as a fun side hobby. So thank you, good sir. I appreciate that, my brother. Everybody's got a different journey, right? And so for some of us, we're here as trying to be a professional. Some people, we're here to be recreational. Some people, we're here to just have fun. There's no problem with any of that on this show. I'll always tell you guys the way I'm trying to approach it. I'm trying to win. I'm trying to be serious. I'm trying to be thoughtful, but I'm also playing long-term. I'm trying to play into an edge, and I'm trying to think strategically and make sure that every time that I'm betting, I'm putting myself in a position to stay in the game, because that's the most important. So that's what we're trying to do here. I appreciate the support and the kind words.